All right, for those of you on, we've got 2 viewers, at least that I can see. All right, I'm going to wait maybe an extra couple of minutes as people get on. I can see the number of viewers. We're up to 7 viewers. Kind of guess some of you are pairing up. So that's cool. So I'll kind of hang tight. So it looks like we've got people rolling in, which is nice. Nice to see. All right, this is pretty good. We're up to 11 viewers, so let's hang tight for a second. Mike. All right, we're at 11 viewers. It's about 11 viewers, 10:30. I'll give it just a few more minutes, and then I'll get rolling. Okay, just got a request that I'm not heard. Can people hear me? You can just email me because you can't talk back to me. We've got 14 viewers on. I'm concerned about the sound right now. Got an email that I couldn't be heard. Okay, so gotta never mind. Okay. Okay, so check, we're good. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We have 15 people online. This is probably the entire class based on how I know some of you are gonna be working with other people and hanging out. So the way that this is gonna work is I've got, obviously this live stream, and you obviously can't talk to me. So I've got my phone, okay. Got my phone. So I'll use this kind of as a chime for me. So if you have a question, just send me an email. I think it's the easiest thing to do. I'll try to look at it. I'll also kind of have a few little breaks in this session just because I'm pretty sure we're on at least a 30-second delay. So in that regard, you know, I can go through some issues or talk about some parts, but then I'll give you a chance to kind of chime in. Specifically, we're going to be doing some in-class work today, and I'm going to need you to be on your browser a little bit. If you're having trouble, I need to kind of walk you through it a little bit. Okay, so that said, let's start out with screen share. And I'm going to, I don't think this will go full screen for you, so I'm just going to have to kind of run it in this small box. But welcome. Thanks for everybody for making this effort to be here. Today's Monday, March 9th. So a few kind of logistical issues. So we've got today, I'm going to introduce legal and regulatory, and we also have a policy issue that we're going to take a look at. We have a policy issue that we're going to take a look at today. So I see that when I'm doing the slides, my camera is off. That's fine. So we've got a legal and policy issue that we'll talk about today, and then on Wednesday, in a couple days here, we'll kind of drill into some of the regulatory issues and line it up against policy. So today's legal and regulatory as we kind of walk through everything. So on Monday, a week from today, we'll do the review, and a week and 2 days from today, we're going to do the second exam, and it'll be online. It'll be similar to the first one. I'll post it, and you'll have 24 hours to work your way through, okay? So then don't forget assignment 2 is due this Friday, March 13th. So we'll move back 2 days. But with that in mind, you can still send me your assignment, just send it to me as a Word document attached via an email, and then I'll put comments into it and get you some feedback back. So Thursday's the last day. I'll take those. I'll get them back to you on Thursday. So don't send them to me Thursday evening if that's all right. So just want to continue to do a recap. I want to just continue to kind of solidify things that we've talked about. So if you recall 2 weeks ago, it's already been a couple of weeks since we introduced cloud computing. We introduced the concept of security, so people can hear. So we introduced the idea of security. So we're moving this idea of as we separate this core infrastructure away from my organization, I have to deal with security not only locally on my operating system and operating systems and applications, but then also security of the core infrastructure moves away from me. So a lot of that security on the non-differentiating technologies and those practices kind of moves out of my hands, right? So organizational structure, I think you can visualize this at this point with cloud computing. So we've got it obviously distributed across my company and the cloud organization. And I've got to probably reposition some of my employees to application layer security because I'm not doing quite as much of that infrastructure security or that platform level security anymore. But decisions on these particular components obviously become shifted as I lose control as in the organizational structure. Some of that shifts away. And authority and control and otherwise private property that used to be mine is now in the hands of vendors. So last week we took a look at total cost of ownership. We did that Amazon TCO stuff, and then we had the tennis ball thing in class. So motivation, around this general maintenance of core infrastructure. So I'm moving that maintenance again. So I'm always going to have kind of this principled idea of moving this infrastructure away. There's, I think, kind of clearly a cost savings that can be had in this world. I think the question that came up on Wednesday and even on Monday was, what is that cost savings? Again, organizational structure, you know, I'm losing some ownership, so it's going to be distributed between me and the company. I probably want to have individuals to start managing the boundaries between myself and the cloud organization, and then, you know, move employees down to that application layer management, or I should say up to that application layer management. I think what you saw on Wednesday was that the decision making alone creates a new decision process. So it's not just a flip of switch, you know, to move to the cloud infrastructure, but there are a lot of decisions that need to get made as we move forward. So I would make a contention that even just looking at the total cost of ownership and what we were doing on Wednesday, interestingly opened up an entirely new decision process of moving some pretty core stuff out of my organization. And then there's this halo idea, that these halo decisions around this TCO, and I think a real nice one that came up on Wednesday was this idea of, you know, the cost of actually making the move. So it's, right, again, I'll use this flip a switch thing, but you can't just, you know, flip a switch and move from my internal infrastructure to my external infrastructure, my cloud infrastructure. So I've got a cost with that as well. All right, so those are kind of the recaps. I'm trying to go back and forth a little bit so you see me. Those are the recaps between, you know, the last 2 weeks on taking a look at this. All right, so today we're going to be taking a look at policy and regulatory. So we'll look at regulatory first. We'll really actually drill into regulatory more on Wednesday, all right? And then today we're going to take a look at an example policy. So there is this argument around regulatory. So the idea of regulatory is that I have client data and I have particular regulations that I need to abide by on that data, okay? So that's the regulatory environment, and that data is going to be in the form of, say, HIPAA, so, you know, healthcare records or credit card information. I think in some of your other classes you look at PCI. It might be the distribution of movie and digital rights. It might be around educational records. So there are certain regulations that kind of need to be overcome. And I think a question for a lot of organizations, or a question that a lot of organizations have is, can I actually, you know, kind of get over this hump of believing that the data is compliant with the regulatory environment within which I'm housing this data? So there's value. You know, I guess I kind of ask you this rhetorical question: is there value in everyone else doing it? This is a kind of an argument that, you know, if the regulatory environment is good for other people, then it's probably good for me as well. All right. So does it matter, you know, for you that the CIA uses cloud computing, that Expedia uses cloud computing, that Citrix does, Nokia, Lamborghini, Intuit, Netflix, Major League Baseball, Bristol Myers Squibb? So there may be value in just kind of saying, listen, we're not the first group to kind of overcome this hurdle and deal with the regulatory environment. There have been other people that have paved the path well ahead of us. So this isn't necessarily kind of a new issue, right? So that's kind of the market standard. Everybody else is doing it, so maybe there's regulatory value in that as well. So market compliance. So the different cloud infrastructures have sites that are available to show this different level of compliance. So if I come back to a screen share, let's do my, oops, stop. All right, I'm gonna do a screen share. I'm gonna come here and take a look at the AWS compliance. See how you are. So if I look at the AWS compliance site, you can see the URL at the top, AWSamazon.com compliance. I can scroll down and they have the AWS assurance programs. And a couple you might recognize inside of here. So PCI, this is the credit card one. We'll take a look really at PCI more on Wednesday and the regulatory environment around PCI. All right, HIPAA is probably something you're pretty familiar with. So healthcare records and whether or not Amazon is compliant with HIPAA. MPAA, Motion Picture Association of America. You're probably all very familiar with a lot of the legal fights around MPAA and the protection on such copyrighted material. FERPA, which is not a great name, but FERPA, which is about protecting student information. So are they compliant in protecting student information? So you can take a look at, you can kind of get this idea here of where Amazon is certified. Now, I think we'll see on Wednesday that this level of certification doesn't guarantee that everything is perfect. So if I'm using Amazon and they are HIPAA compliant, the question is going to become, are they HIPAA compliant at the infrastructure level, at the platform level, at the application layer level? So where does Amazon kind of lose compliance authority, and where do I, as a client, have to gain that compliance authority? And that's a really interesting question. So on Wednesday, we'll be looking at software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service, and we'll kind of see the different levels that are managed by these different groups, and how far the different cloud infrastructures can take compliance. All right. Okay, so let's get back to the slide deck here. I think this is the way it's going to be. I'm going to have to kind of jump back and forth from one to the other. All right, so this is a nice quote that compliance covers a lot of ground regarding things like Sarbanes-Oxley, the EU Data Protection Act, PCI DSS, which is for credit cards, HIPAA for healthcare. So you have to have internal controls in place, but moving to this public cloud, it means that I'm giving up some of these controls to the cloud vendor, but I'll be honest with you, you don't give them all up. So just again, because the cloud vendor is HIPAA compliant, doesn't mean that me as a client can simply release all of those responsibilities. So know the new infrastructure, and you need to know the workload on that infrastructure. So again, software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. Where is the workload being distributed between me and the cloud? So I may have to care about things like data protection. So in the EU, all personal information must be housed on EU servers. There's this concept of multi-tenancy, which is, can I even share the same physical space on a server with others that are competitors that regulatory won't let me do? So I need to understand what the multi-tenancy is on a particular server. How do you deprovision data? So for example, if I'm holding data or management of accounts at the cloud infrastructure, how do I make sure that I deprovision or take away authority and rights for those individuals on that data? Little things you have to think about, and whether or not how well certified they are to do these things. You can negotiate a lot of this with what's called your SLA or your service level agreement. So a lot of what we've been looking at would simply be, we're a very small client, and the organization, the cloud infrastructure organization, would just kind of take our work. If we're a larger group looking to move quite a bit of infrastructure, I think that's something you can negotiate with your service level agreement. All right, so know your standards. Do you know what PCI DSS? Do you know what the standards are and what's required for PCI DSS? ISO 9001, FedRAMP, the ability for a cloud provider to be certified for federal applications. Do you know what these are? Well, I'm guessing you don't, which is completely fine. But you kind of need to start digging into what these different regulatory environments are. And again, in doing so, you begin to understand the level of control that you have as a client and the level of control that the cloud infrastructure has as well. So you've got to understand what these regulatory environments are, which ones are applicable to you, and then how that regulatory environment is distributed between you as the client and the cloud provider. All right. Just kind of finishing up regulatory here. So Amazon, this is kind of, if we look at the two kind of big organizations, that we've looked at in this class so far. We have Amazon, so credit card compliant, yes. ISO 9001 and 27001 compliant, yes. FedRAMP compliant, yes. And HIPAA compliant, yes. So they have their own kind of compliance issues that they're able to achieve. Google, on the other hand, yes. PCI, yes. ISO, yeah. FedRAMP, at least the last time I checked, no. They weren't FedRAMP authorized. So if you're a federal organization looking to move to the cloud, because they're not FedRAMP certified, it's quite possible that you're not able to move your federal infrastructure, your federal platforms to the Google Cloud infrastructure because they aren't certified on FedRAMP. All right. All right. So that's just a real quick overview of regulatory. Like I said, we'll dig into regulatory a little bit more on Wednesday. We'll start taking a look at some of the PCI stuff on Wednesday. All right, so and what it'll do is it'll help set up where regulatory issues reside between we and the cloud. All right, so I'm going to take just a few minute break here. I'm going to turn on my my stopwatch. So I'm going to take a 2-minute break, okay? And what I'm going to do is, if you have questions or anything about regulatory environment, fire them away on email. All right, so fire them away that way, and then we'll start into policy issues. A few of the policy things that I want to walk through today in 2 minutes. Okay. All right, the 2 minutes is up. So in this kind of the second part, what we're going to take a look at here is policy. So I'm going to need you to have a browser kind of handy because I'm going to have you do a few things. Okay, so again, we have regulatory and policy. I just introduced regulatory really just as a way to kind of juxtapose policy. And then what I'm going to do is I'll talk more about regulatory on Wednesday. Okay, so just a few reminders. On Blackboard, this is all available, so the slides are available on Blackboard. I also did a secret recording of this class on Blackboard just in case this stream didn't work. It looks like it's working just fine. But there's a video there as well of all of the content that I'm going through today. Okay, and I do believe this live broadcast will be recorded and available. I may take it down. I'm not entirely sure because you have the broadcast in Blackboard, but it's the same content. So either way, if you want to watch this video again, you can. If you want to watch the Blackboard video, you can, and you've got the slide deck. So there should be plenty of opportunity to get at the information. Again, don't forget, assignment 2 is due Friday. Send me your documents. I see I got one during class here, which is great. I'll comment on them and send them back to you with comments, okay? It's usually in your best interest to at least send it to me once. All right, so let's move into policy. All right, so organizational policy. So policy on the cloud infrastructure. So policy is going to be a way that you implement the regulatory environment. Regulatory is going to sit at a kind of higher level, and policy is how I actually implement. So we're going to take a look at what's called S3 today, the simple storage solution at Amazon. And I'm actually going to set up accounts for everybody. And then I'm going to have you log in and do something really, really simple, all right? To just give you an idea of policy. I'm going to show you how I set up this policy as well. So again, it's this idea that the policy is kind of at a more local level of the technology that I control, so that we're okay on these compliance or these regulatory issues. So I'll walk through the sample policy and one that we should all be able to validate. So I'm going to go over to my Amazon Web Services right now. Get them. Screen share. All right, and you should now be seeing my Amazon Web Services, okay? Okay. Okay, so I got a request to talk a little bit about HIPAA or PCI. I tell you what I'll do, because I'm talking a little bit more about the regulatory environment around HIPAA, specifically PCI, but also HIPAA. I'll talk about that on Wednesday, how about, because I'm kind of drilling into policy now, and then on Wednesday I'm kind of drilling into regulatory. And that would probably be a nice, kind of a nice segue into Wednesday's class. So let's plan on doing that. Okay. All right, good. Questions. Send questions away. All right. So here I've got my Amazon Web Services. Okay, and you can see, yeah, I think you've seen this before. So I was able to set up a virtual server in the cloud. What I'm going to be looking at today is this over here on this storage and content delivery. Okay, so it's really just a storage issue. So I can open up S3. So I'm a manager right now, and I'm setting up a simple storage service using Amazon. And what I'm going to be doing is as an administrator, I'm going to be setting up this simple storage, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to set up access for everybody and actually policies on this data as well. So I'm going to create a bucket here. So the bucket's going to be ISQA3420. A bucket, just think of like an actual physical bucket. That's where I'm going to put data. And then you can see that I have to select a region. You can see all of the regions. I'm just going to go with US standard. I don't care about logging right now, so I'm just going to create this bucket. All right, so I have a bucket that I've created where I can put information. So where I can upload documents, where I can store data that comes from applications that I create. So in this bucket, you'll see that I can create folders. So kind of like the hierarchical structure that you would be interested in, or you're kind of used to, that we're all kind of used to, right? So I'll just create a folder called Monday the 9. All right. And you'll see I have a folder in here called Monday 9. All right. So there's nothing in that folder right now. I can upload a file into that folder. Add file. I have this 3420 folder, and I'm uploading a 3420 March 9 text file. All right, so you get the idea here that I can just pretty simply kind of upload, create folders and upload files into there. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'll kind of increase this text. I just got a note that sometimes it's a little hard to see the text, which is a good tip, okay? Keep these things coming. This is how we work through these. So I do appreciate the feedback, the real-time feedback. All right, so you can see that across the top I have a bucket, I have a folder called 3420, I have a folder inside 3420 called Monday the 9, and then inside of Monday 9 I've got 3420, it's just a text file inside of there, all right? So you can kind of work your way, makes sense, okay, fair enough. So what I want to do is I want to give everybody in the class access to this folder so you can create your own folders and potentially upload your own files if you'd like, okay? So this is going to be a policy issue. So this may be responding to the way that we respond to protecting healthcare data or the way that we respond to protecting credit card data. We know that we need to be compliant with some regulatory environment, and we have to set up policy to be compliant to the regulatory space. So we'll go back to the slide deck here. There we go. Oh, not summary. Okay, never mind. I'm not going back to the slide deck. All right. So how do I go about doing this? Okay. So what I want to do as administrator is I'm going to come back into here. Okay, you can see that I've got S3, I've got my EC2 stuff, and again, I'm an administrator, so I have access to all of these. So what I want to do is I want to set up this identity and access management. Okay, saw where I clicked there, but it was kind of right in the middle. So I have this identity and access management, which I'm going to allow access to individuals in this class. Right? See, right off the bat, I have a variety of errors. I don't have root keys. I don't have individual users. I don't have groups. I don't have a password policy. These are things that I can begin to establish as part of my access management to my Amazon console. Right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up users on this. So I'm going to do a create new users, and I'm going to create a Smith. Smith and Mike Jones, okay? So I'm creating 2 users. Now for everybody, you're all going to be able to either log in as Ed Smith or Mike Jones. So I don't need to create accounts for everyone. I don't need to generate key access. So this is, we're not going to be querying this environment remotely. So it's not necessarily, we're just going to be doing it through a web screen. Right? So I'm going to create these users. So what I've done here is I've created Ed Smith and Mike Jones. I'm sure you're still here. You're not seeing it. All right, if you missed that, I'm concerned that you missed that. So what I did was I came into my AMI, right? So I'm at the AMI. So I came through this way, identity and access management. Okay. I clicked on users over here. And what I did was I just clicked create new users, and it created, I was able to create Ed Smith and Mike Jones. Okay? And so here's Ed Smith and Mike Jones. So I have 2 users available to log into the S3 now. You can't do it quite yet. So what I need to do is I need to edit these users. Okay. So I click, you can see up on top here, I click on Ed Smith. Right? And right now, Ed Smith has no password. So I'm going to manage the password for Ed Smith. I'm going to assign a custom password. If I recall, the password is Ed Smith 12 EDSMITH 12. All right. Again, I'm like other classes, I would fail miserably. I'm creating passwords, and I apply this, and so now Ed Smith has a password. You know, I'm going to do the same thing for Mike Jones. This is all lowercase too. Okay. So I'm going to click Manage Password, assign a custom password, and this is going to be Mike Jones 12, Mike Jones 12, all lowercase. Okay. You will not have to create users. So what I'm doing here is I'm showing you what I need to do as an administrator to set up policy so you can access S3. All right. So right now, I have 2 users who have passwords associated with them, Ed Smith and Mike Jones. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assign Ed Smith and Mike Jones to a group. Right? create. So I've got these two individuals, and I'm going to assign them to a group. So if you remember, like when you use your Linux machines for your other classes, you can be an individual user, but you can also be a user that's part of a group on that machine. So I'm going to create a new group, and your guesses as to what it's going to be. Pretty cool. Okay. Okay, so I created a new group called ISQA3420. Another email. I was checking these out. Let me go back to screen share. I think I am screen sharing. Okay. So what I'm looking at here is I've set up, I'm attaching a policy for this group. And very quickly, as you look through here, I have different policies that I can assign to this group. Right? So let's take a look at CloudFront. Here's my identity and access management, full access, security audit, storage gateway. There are a variety of Amazon Web Services that I could provide access to for this group. But you know what? I'm not going to provide this group any access for the time being. Here's two that are going to be kind of interesting to us. S3 full access and read-only access, but I'm not going to give you any access for the time being. So I'm just going to click Create Group, right? And then the group is created with no policy. I'm going to add users to the group. I'll add Ed Smith and Mike Jones, add users. So if I come back to groups, you can see that this group actually has no permissions, right? And there's 2 users to this group. Okay, so now here's where I'm going to ask you to log in at this point, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is jot down this number. So it's 57444304859. So just jot it down on a piece of paper or jot it down on an electronic tab or something like that, piece of paper. So 57444304859, okay? So we're going to need that number because that's how you're going to end up accessing the S3 environment, okay? I'm going to copy this number. It may actually be the number that's in the slide deck. Kind of forget. So it may be the same number. So anyway, here's the account number. 57444304859. All right? All right, so now what do I do with this number? Well, what you do is in the slide deck, I'm going to make sure that in the slide deck, let me go back to the slide deck. So I'm on this summary slide deck, so it's the one after this, okay? And you can see, here's the summary. So what I want you to do is go to the Amazon console to see S3. So you should be able to log in. And what it's going to look like is it's going to have a box at the top that asks for an account number, and then your users and your user password. So Ed Smith 12, Mike Jones 12. Just pick one of the users, all right? So if I was to log in, I'm going to screen share my Safari. Okay, so I'm screen sharing my Safari. So just go to that site, and then what you do is you put the account number in here. Username is Ed Smith, Smith, and Ed, S-M-I-T-H, 12, all right? And sign in. And lo and behold, you should see something that looks like this. That says, you don't have permissions to see the S3 console. Okay, so what I did was I set up the users to be able to log in, but you don't have any policy permissions on here. So I'm gonna kind of wait here for a second and fire up my stopwatch again and wait just a few minutes to see if you're able to log in. No need to email me, but if you're having, log in. But if you're having a little trouble, you could let me know. And again, you should see something similar to what I'm seeing, which is the sorry, you're not authorized to see this. You may actually see the entire Amazon, that big screen with all of the services on it. That's okay too if you see that. And if I hear from a couple people that they're having trouble logging in, I'll just probably just do it again, as opposed to kind of, one at a time. Okay. Okay, it looks like we have a little bit of issue for some of you. It's asking for an email address. I'm not entirely sure what this is. Could you, do you have a browser that you don't use often and try through that browser? So for example, if you're using Apple or Mac and you don't use Safari often, maybe open your Safari browser and try to go that way. That's why I had to go through my Safari browser. Or if you're in Windows and you aren't using IE often, maybe try to go through Internet Explorer. That might work. This may just be something I have to kind of resolve between now and then. I'm going to show you what it looks like anyway. So if you don't have the straight satisfaction, it'll be a little too bad, but you're not going to miss any of the content by not being able to log in. So again, I'll just wait like a minute or two. Okay, I got a few emails. It sounds like there were a few people that were having trouble logging in. Maybe I can work with you a little off screen if you're having trouble logging in, because it sounds like a lot of other people were doing okay. Yeah, so if you're presented with the full login screen with your email address, guessing this is because it's cached in your browser. And so this is why I think you're going to need to open a different browser or just completely flush everything out of this. I'm looking, I don't know if there's a way to kind of say, yeah, I don't want to do that. But you're just going to have to try a different browser for the time being. And for those of you that can't log in, I can work with you offline because we only have 30 minutes left. We have plenty of time. But nonetheless, I'm going to show you what it looks like. All right. Okay, so let me go back to my screen share, which is this guy. All right, so for those of you that were able to log in just through Mike Jones or Ed Smith, you can see that. Now, one of the things you can do is see this box. Let me try and show my screen. See this box right up here on the left? Yeah. All right. Shoot. Okay. Let me go back real quickly. So stop sharing this screen. I'm going to come back and share this screen. All right. So in sharing this screen, I guess what's happening here is that the console, for those of you that have an existing S3 account, that it's trying to pull you into your existing account. So I'm going to have to think about this a little bit. But the site, again, that I was using Safari with to be able to not be pulled into my account because I don't use Safari was console, console, .aws.amazon.com/S3. So let me just walk you through what this is going to look like, and I'll have a general idea of how many people were able to log in for a task that I was asking. Well, okay, try this. So Adam found a solution, which it sounds like it's going to work. So let me do this. Give me 2 minutes. Just give me 2 minutes here. All right. I'm going to be sending out an email. All right, try the email that was just sent out. I mean, I've got to wait 30 seconds. But try the email that was just sent out. I just sent it out via Blackboard. All right, so just click that link or copy and paste that link, and you can see it's got the account ID in it, and hopefully this will just ask you for Ed Smith or Mike Jones, and you can log in that way. Fingers crossed, everybody. Okay, so I'll go on, and we can kind of resolve this as we wrap up class, because I want to get to this policy issue. Okay, so when you're logged in or you're seeing my screen, all right, either way, hopefully you're able to log in. I hope this works. So there's at the upper left corner, there's this Amazon, it's called Console Home. And I can click on that Console Home if you're logged in, and it takes you to this screen, right? It takes you to the full screen. And so you're still logged in as Ed Smith or Mike Jones. So I'm a user now of the system, trying to engage with S3. And you've already seen that if I click S3, it'll tell me, yeah, that's not going to happen, okay? I can go back, and I could even click on, say, like EC2 to set up a virtual server in the cloud, and it'll kind of bark at me by saying, you're not authorized to do any of this stuff. You're just not going to happen. So even if I try to launch an instance, and say I select an Amazon AMI instance, it again just barks at me. So saying that I'm not authorized to do this work. Okay. So what am I authorized to do? Well, again, what I did was I created an account. Oh, shoot. Okay, a number of you are able to get in. Yay! That makes me very happy. All right, so here are the accounts again. I'll show you the accounts again. So stop. Thanks, Adam, for finding that on the fly. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the accounts. So the accounts here are Ed Smith 12, or Mike Jones 12. All right. This is teamwork at its finest. Technology working like a team, like a champ, right? Okay, so what you can do is I'm going to come back to my Safari. So I'm going to stop and come back to my Safari. Yes, okay, so take a look, click that left box, and you shouldn't have access to anything in here. You have no policy set up for any of this. So again, regulatory to policy is the idea that I have certain regulatory obligations, and what I need to do myself is set up policy to kind of abide by those regulations, okay? So what we're doing right now is setting up policy so that you as users have access to my main console account, okay? All right, so hopefully you've taken a look. Again, you can click on EC2. It's going to say not going to happen. You can click on S3. It's not going to happen. So I need to go back and set up policy for you, Okay, so I'm going to go back into my identity management, which is here, I believe. All right, so what I need to do is for these groups, I need to select, right, and I need to attach a policy. So what I did is I double-clicked on the group. You should see where I am now. I'm going through a couple different browsers. My Safari browser is the view that you see. What I'm doing now is not something that you can do unless you have your own Amazon account. So I'm in this user management, this IAM. I'm looking at groups, and I'm looking at that group that has ISQA3420, which again has the users of Mike Smith and Ed Smith and Mike Jones. Okay. So what I can do here is I can attach a policy. Okay, so for those of you that aren't able to get in, let's talk a little bit offline, because I just want to show you this policy here. Okay, so what I did was I scrolled down. You can see the scroll bar over on the right side, and we have this S3 full access and S3 read-only access. So I could give everybody the ability to do read-only access, but that's not good enough. So I want to give you full access to my S3 account. A few caveats here. All I'm asking you to do is upload a folder, all right, or create a folder. I'm going to be removing your access here very shortly, right after this class, right? So please don't put anything incredibly large up in S3, because you just don't do it, please, all right? So I'm going to give everybody in this class S3 full access, okay? I could give you, say, cloud compute, you know, the Elastic Beanstalk. I could give you kind of full EC2 to create your own virtual servers, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give you access to S3. So I'm going to attach this policy, and everybody should now have S3 full access, all right? Everybody, because you're logged in as Ed Smith or Mike Jones in the group of ISQA3420, you should now have access to S3 in full. All right, so we already have this done. What I have here is I go back to my Safari console, and when I click S3 now, I should see the bucket. And hopefully you're able to see the bucket as well. All right. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do, is to click on the bucket. All right. Somebody's already created a test folder, which is great. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is come up here in this top and click on create a folder. And what I want you to do is just create a folder with your name. So Matt Germanprey, you know, just go ahead and click create folder and just call it Matt. Don't call it this, but call it your name. And click OK. And I just want to see kind of these folders coming across, and this will kind of give me an idea of who was able to log in and who was not able to log in. I know that some of you are working in teams of 3, so just go ahead and create a folder for everybody. It's really not complicated again. Click folder, or I'm sorry, click create folder, type your name, click done, and you should be good. All right. So what I've done is I've created a, as you're doing this, you can just listen to me in the background. What I've done is created a policy for data storage. I'm the main administrator of this. I create a group and users that you now have access on policy administration through the cloud to kind of respond to any regulatory needs that may be evident or that I need to attend to, right? So the regulatory is kind of set, you know, say for HIPAA, it's how I manage healthcare data. If it's for PCI, it's how I manage credit card data. And these are kind of high-level regulatory sets. And then from there, what I need to do is set policy that allows people to do certain things and kind of respond to this regulatory environment. And this is just kind of showing you the way I can set some policy in the cloud environment. If I was to reload this, come back into ISQA3420. Great. I can see these people in here. This is awesome. All right, drop tables. Why would you do that to me? So this is great. All right, so thanks. This is really, really nice. It's good to see. All right. So for those of you that are still kind of, getting your folders up there, it's awesome. All right, so I'm going to stop my presentation. Not the whole thing. Just give me like a second here while I wrap this up. All right, so we had the console. Thanks for kind of working with me through that. That was great. We have this account number, we have users, we have groups. I think you're kind of seeing this. So, okay, class attendance. Well, I don't take attendance, but create a folder with your name if you haven't done that already. So what I've been kind of saying through this entire hour that we've been on, that regulatory is really at this broad level. So these are kind of high level things that need to be accomplished. Must do this, must do that. Now, again, I'll talk much more deeply about regulatory on Wednesday. So it focuses on services that the cloud organization provides or services that I as the client have to provide. We kind of either have to be okay with the cloud provider accommodating this regulatory environment or not. So, with Amazon, again, we had PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, FERPA compliance, FedRAMP compliance. So we need to just kind of believe that that assurance program has been passed by Amazon to be compliant. The question then becomes, whether or not we as a client are compliant as well, because we don't just push the entire regulatory issue onto the cloud infrastructure. We can negotiate on the service level agreement, this SLA, if we're uncomfortable with issues that relate directly to infrastructure. And then what you just saw is policy is a really local level issue. So it's me going in as an administrator and setting up users and groups, and then you saw I selected the S3 policy, which gave you access to S3. And so this is how I would manage my policies on a day-to-day basis. So if I'm an organization, those policy decisions oftentimes rest with me. So if we're thinking organizational structure, I'm over on my side. So decision-making regulatory, it really can help organizations make slightly simpler decisions, especially when it comes to infrastructure. So if I'm looking at an organization, again, like Google or Amazon, to be compliant on this regulatory environment, well, if they've passed the assurance program, that's great. I do think that it's, well, let me back up. I was going to say, it's still a responsibility too. There are certain decisions that I need to make as a client regarding regulatory that are not just all the burden, or, not just entirely pushed to the cloud infrastructure. Social responsibility. So it is obviously the responsibility of both the client and the cloud infrastructure, because they now have ethical responsibilities, potentially legal responsibilities for protecting patient care record data or protecting credit card data. I'll stick with those two. Division of work, I think you can probably start seeing this a little bit better when we start looking at policy, that all of a sudden, I as the policy administrator here have access to start defining who has access to which cloud services, and I hope you can see that there. And then the source of what the policy decisions are, like I mentioned earlier, I think they're really going to come really organizationally. So the policy decisions aren't going to be at Amazon. I don't know if any of you noticed when I was even setting up some of my policy issues, Amazon had that list of things to do. You haven't created users, you haven't created groups, you don't have a password policy. That's about as far as they can take it with me. It's just kind of alerts. But really when it comes to making decisions and the authority and control on those decisions, that really does reside with me. All right. So remember that assignment 2 is due this Friday. I'll say it again. Send me your documents. I'm happy to take a look at them and give you responses back. Take a look at the specifications for the assignment. They should be pretty straightforward because they're like the first assignment. Have a great week. I really, really appreciate you kind of, doing this with me. I think this is a really interesting kind of exercise, and I do appreciate kind of the rapid response of everybody in kind of working as a team to get this off the ground. All right. So let me just real quickly give you the thanks. Again, this will be posted on the Google Plus site. Okay, so if you want to go back and take a look, all of this in a kind of a shorter, more condensed version is available on Blackboard, right? Video, so it's similar. Create that folder for yourself, and I'll see you all on Wednesday. Again, thanks for the awesome effort, everybody. Take care. I'm going to stop my broadcast. I'll sit here for a few seconds, but I'll stop my broadcast. Or if you have questions, let me know. Oh, and as I'm kind of going through this too, I'll reach out. You've already turned me off. I'll reach out to some of the people who I don't think it worked for, and I can work with you directly. It'd be nice to just kind of have you see it. So. So again, I'm done. You can log off. I'm just kind of waiting for the number of viewers to drop to 0.